When Barry Trotz took over as general manager, he said the pillars of this team would be Roman Josi, Filip Forsberg, and Juuse Saros. So do we still think he can retool a team around these three players and get the Predators back to contention in their tenure? We're going to discuss and debate that on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Tuesday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in each and every weekday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And friends, I have a partner in crime.
Yes, you do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, on today's show, we're going to take a look back and take a look ahead. Barry Trotz, of course, talked about this when he first took over as general manager. He believed that he could build a winning team with a great defender, an elite forward, and a franchise goaltender. After the season this year that the Predators have had, we're going to take a look back at his comments and debate just how important or not Roman Josi, Filip Forsberg, and Juuse Saros are to Nashville's future success. So gonna dive into the deep weeds on today's show. Before we get into the ding weeds, do want to let you know today's episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Emma, we're going to get, deep in the weeds here. We're going to get philosophical, but we are going to kick off the show with just a little tidbit of news. There has been waiver action. The Nashville Predators picked up Swedish defenseman, ladies and gentlemen, Andreas Englund from the LA Kings. There's more to this than the fact that he's a Swedish defenseman, but sometimes that's all I need to hear to be on board. But Emma, when you look at this pickup, initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts are this is a temporary Jeremy Lauzon replacement.
Yeah.
I think that, you look at him, this is a guy who does not come with term. He's a UFA after this year. I don't think this is a future piece or a building block for Nashville. I immediately went and looked at his bio and saw how tall and how big he was. 6'4" left shot defenseman. That sounds an awful lot like Jeremy Lauzon. And that is something that they have missed in the lineup with Lauzon being on IR. We don't have a timeline for him. Don't know if this means that he's done for the season necessarily, but it does mean that, they are missing what he brings to the lineup. And that's his size and his physicality. That's why you see a guy like Kevin Gravel getting called up from Milwaukee as opposed to a Spencer Stastny or a Mark Del Gaizo. Both, great defensemen, do a lot of good things, but they do not bring those same qualities. They don't have the size and the physicality that Lauzon does. And so this was an easy, cheap pickup. He's making $1 million and he's a UFA at the end of the year. So I think that's how I see it. That's what I think this is.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I also think Luke Schen's got to be like, hallelujah, I am not the cheese standing alone as the big physical defenseman for the Nashville Predators, because let's face it, the defense has been just decimated this year for a variety of reasons. And Jeremy Lauzon, such a loss for this team. And like you said, we don't have any idea on a timeline for Lauzon's return, but man, this team is missing Jeremy Lauzon. Just everything that he brings defensively, physicality, you're missing a piece there. So this may be somebody who is a Band-Aid for the missing Lauzon wound that the Nashville Predators have. And I agree with you. I think, I don't know that fans need to read too much into this. I just think Nashville's saying, hey, you know what? This is somebody who may fit a need that clearly we're lacking right now. So that is the news there. We are going to circle back to the defense and talk about that, and part of that conversation will be the decimated defense for the Predators this season. But we're going to kind of take a bigger step back. We're going to zoom out on this episode and go back to some comments that Barry Trotz has made during his tenure as general manager. And I've pulled a clip from July 1st. Let's just take a minute, Emma. I was rewatching this clip and I was literally having like an existential crisis because I remember sitting in that room like, holy crap, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, Scott Wedgwood. Oh my gosh, it's all coming together. We were so naive.
Oh, those were the days. I miss that. It feels like 84 years ago, but
Yeah.
yes.
Back when there was hope. Back when there was so much hope. We were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Sure.
Now we're just not.
Now we're just here.
Now we're just here.
We're just here.
We're just here. Sure. But Barry Trotz made some comments back in this particular July 1st press conference, but it wasn't anything that we had really heard that was new. And I just want to play kind of a snippet of that, and that's going to springboard us into our conversation today.
The core is really good. Every team that is a good team in the National Hockey League has, I think, a couple components. You got to have good goaltending. You got to have an elite defenseman. You got to have an elite scorer on the one side. You need an elite centerman or a top centerman, and you need depth. And I start looking at our team now, and we check a lot of boxes with the youth that we can inject in the next couple of years, and the culture that we have with the veteran players. I think allows us to get into a window. We're in a great division. I mean, you look at teams like Dallas and Colorado, and on the other side you got Vegas and Edmonton, and you just go. The list goes on and on. You don't know. You want to be as competitive as you can, and you want to win. And we got guys that are craving a win.
Hindsight 2020. And Barry Trotz, we're going to talk about each of these components, but he talked about having an elite scorer. And again, going back to sitting in that room thinking Filip Forsberg just had a 48-goal season. Nashville just signed 2 40-plus goal scorers in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. We've got more than one elite goal scorer. Thank you very much, Barry Trotz. This season, goal scoring is just one of a myriad of what the flag nogs that have happened for this Nashville Predators team. But I want to focus specifically on Filip Forsberg, because this is somebody that I think Barry Trotz has really believed is that elite goal scorer that Nashville can add around and that can kind of rely on. He can be that pillar offensively. When you look at Filip Forsberg's big picture career, not just this season, but big picture career, Emma, do you consider Filip Forsberg an elite goal scorer?
I think he can be, if surrounded by the right pieces. I think he absolutely, has I would say, of the team prior to the additions of Stamkos, etc. I think that he was the only one. Forsberg was the only guy on the Predators roster last year who I would say, could he be? Is that his ceiling? Does he have a ceiling in the elite range? And I would say yes. Mm-hmm. But I just don't think that I'm comfortable saying he's elite yet. He definitely has all of the ingredients to where he could be. But again, I think, he's had some injury struggles over the years. So we hadn't always gotten a full season of him. So it's hard to tell because of that. And then, he didn't really have elite, playmakers playing with him. So it's hard to, you can't do everything yourself. And so I think that I still do believe he has the potential to be. Like, I think we saw such a huge jump in him, like his performance last year, that I don't know that we've seen his ceiling yet. And yes, I'm aware that he's 30 years old, but
Oh, heavens.
I still think that, like he has that potential, and he just hasn't had, like, again, he's got the ingredients. He's just, some of it is beyond his control, unfortunately.
I agree with you. I think that the whole conversation of eliteness is deceptive in the sense that it doesn't necessarily happen in a vacuum. Even when you look at somebody like Connor McDavid, just absolute generational talent. I mean, there is no way that you wouldn't say Connor McDavid is elite in and of himself, but it sure helps that he plays with Leon Draisaitl. Now, Connor McDavid's going to score goals regardless of who passes him the puck, but even his level of eliteness does not happen in a vacuum. And so it is difficult to look at one player and say that's elite. I went back and looked at last year's Stanley Cup winning team, the Florida Panthers. Their top scorer, Sam Reinhart, 56 goals. His 82 game average over the course of his career is 31 goals per 82 games. When you look at Filip Forsberg, his career average for, his 82 game average over the course of his career is 34 goals. Now, would you necessarily say that's Sam Reinhart? He's elite. I don't know that you would necessarily say that, but I think it's situational. And it's not in a vacuum. And I agree with you. I think what we saw last season from Forsberg is he was set up for success. He has the skill, he has the talent.
Yeah.
The criteria is a moving target. And I think the success and the definition of elite depends on so many things. But I do think Filip Forsberg is a player that Nashville needs to have to win, to be a deep cup run team. I think you have to have Filip Forsberg. I don't think you can trade Filip Forsberg and bring in just anybody and replace him. So in that sense, I think for this team, he does qualify as being for the Nashville Predators elite.
Not counting Steven Stamkos. I think
Right.
that Filip Forsberg is the closest thing that they have to an elite scorer. And I still do believe that he can be. I just, we haven't seen it with enough consistency yet. And again, a lot of that is due to factors that are outside of his control.
Yeah, agreed. Barry Trotz, in that very same comment, talked about contending teams needing an elite defenseman. So why do some Nashville Predators fans think three-time Norris finalist Roman Josi might not be that guy? We're going to talk about that. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find an amazing candidate fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Business doesn't slow down, even if you're in that spot where you need the right hire yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That is exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. All right, Emma, this one gets me. Talking about an elite defenseman. And you and I have touched on this before in a season where the team has drastically underperformed. And I can't even overstate the underperformance of this team. Roman Josi has been under fire a lot. Roman Josi, 3-time Norris finalist. He is a Norris Trophy winner in 2019-2020. He finished second in Norris voting last season, second in 21 and 22. And by the way, he may have even won that if one dude had even included him on his ballot. Like, I feel like I'm going to carry that anger with me to the end of my days. But anyway, when you look at Roman Josi, elite defenseman or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Roman Josi is an elite defenseman because so obviously he's extremely gifted as an offensive defenseman, and he's led this team in scoring many times. I think that too, what's him from other, so-called offensive defensemen, guys like Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, for example. And I don't mean this as a criticism of those guys, more of just a way to differentiate them. Roman Josi is an offensive defenseman, but he's also incredibly gifted in his own zone. He's so responsible defensively as well. He takes care of the puck, he blocks shots, but he's also out there making plays, and and whether it's scoring goals or quarterbacking the power play or feeding the puck, like he can do everything, and he makes it look easy. So again, I would say elite defenseman who does not get near the respect that he deserves, from around the league. Yes.
Yeah. And yes, 34 years old, going to turn 35 this year. And I know that people are looking at stats this season, which are not terrific for Roman Josi, and saying, here we go.
But
this is not
are
the
they
guy.
are they terrific for anyone this year?
Well,
No.
and you have to dig into that. You can look at a column of numbers and say, here it is. This is the beginning of the end of Roman Josi. He's over the hill. It's a downward, down from here. We've missed Roman Josi's window to be quote unquote elite. But you have to look at the circumstances of this season. Friends, the Shea experiment did not work. It was a repeat of the McDonough-Ekholm debacle, where we're going to switch Roman Josi's side and put him with Brady Shea. And while that sounded amazing, it didn't work. And so now, between waivers and trades and injuries, you are seeing Roman Josi play with Luke Shen or Justin Barron recently. That's who he's partnered with in recent games. That's not necessarily a recipe for getting the best out of Roman Josi.
No. And again, you can't look at one play. I know I'm jumping the gun because I know we're going to get to it, but anyone who says that Juuse Saros is the problem this year, just by looking at his stats, his numbers, of course they've been bad. So have everyone else's. If you are really telling me that Juuse Saros is the problem with this team, then you aren't watching the games. Like, you're just looking at the numbers. And I would put, maybe to a slightly lesser degree, but I would put Roman Josi in that category as well. If you think he's the problem, you're not watching the games. And I think that, again, like, he's doing all he can, but this team is such a dumpster fire right now that, it's not fair to expect any one person, even if they are elite at what they do. It's not fair or realistic to expect one guy to single-handedly pull them out, but by God, he's tried. And if anyone could, it would probably be Roman Josi.
You cannot look at a column in a vacuum. So when I hear people talk about Roman Josi needs to be traded, number one, he's not gonna be. So stop wishing it were so. He's not going to be traded. Roman Josi has value to this team, not just, in the next 2 or 3 seasons, but he has value for what this team is going to look like 4 or 5 seasons from now. You have elite players coming up, potentially elite players, I should say, in the defensive pipeline. And again, potentially elite. I tried to get ahead of myself, but did I learn nothing from rewatching that July 1st press conference? But you're looking at Tanner Molendyke, potential to be elite. Andrew Gibson, potential. Like there is a lot of potential in the defensive pipeline, and you want Roman Josi around these guys as they are getting used to the NHL.
If you think it's bad now and you want to get rid of Filip Forsberg, Roman Josi, Juuse Saros, whoever, like, be careful what you wish for.
If you think this season has left us unbright-eyed and unbushy-tailed, just imagine what we would look like in a rebuild. And friends, you would look the same way as well.
I just don't think people understand. Like, I'm going to say something that Nashville fans aren't going to like to hear, but I think that this fan base has been spoiled over the last several years because, they had the Stanley Cup run, the run to the final in 2017. They had the President's Trophy in 2018. And ever since then, it's like this team has been trying to replicate that success. And now they haven't quite, but they have, they've come close enough to where this was a consistent playoff team for so long. Now, again, the whole other conversation, oh, they didn't make it far in the playoffs. I know that, but I'm just saying that I think that this team now, they're getting a taste of what it feels like to not be a playoff team, and they can't handle it, and they're crying rebuild. And it's like, do you understand that a rebuild does not take one off season? That's not how this works. Like, you're going to be bad for like 5 years if that's what you want.
Yeah. If you're upset that the Predators aren't making the postseason this season, and I get it. Like you look at the roster and you're like, they should make the postseason and they didn't. We need to tear it all down. I understand why that is your initial reaction, but imagine how it's going to feel when you don't make the postseason for 8 or 9 or 10 seasons in a row. It's going to feel even worse, y'all. Coming up, we are going to continue to rage pod about a topic that just absolutely burns our britches. Y'all, we're going to need you to lay off Juuse Saros. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I know it's hard to say this and quantify this, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Juuse Saros has perhaps been under the most scrutiny this season. And a large part of that is that he just signed a contract. Barry Trotz chose the fork in the road that led to Juuse Saros. Obviously a lot of people didn't like Yaroslav Askarov being traded. A lot of those emotions have been dumped onto Juuse Saros. And look, it's been a tough season for Saros. He's played 41 games. His record is 11-23-6. He has an .899 save percentage. Those are his worst statistics since he played one game in the 2015-2016 season. So I get it. You look at the column and the numbers and you say elite goaltending, you've got to be joking. Juuse Saros is an elite goaltender. Let's look at the season that Juuse Saros has had. We touched on this before, but it bears repeating again. The defense in front of Juuse Saros, Emma, straight wolf this season. I mean, we are 50-some games in, and the defense looks like it has no idea what they're doing.
Like, whatsoever. And I go back to, if you're looking at the numbers, it's so lazy to me. It is so unbelievably lazy to first off, not watch the games. Listen, they have not been fun. Some of us are still putting in the work and watching
We're
them.
still
Okay.
watching.
Again, I'm not going to tell you have to watch, but if you're not going to watch, then maybe don't be throwing stones. Just saying.
Mhm.
If you're just looking at the numbers, you're looking at one player's numbers. Again, the lazy choice. I'm not trying to vindicate Juuse Saros of anything this year, like any wrongdoing. Has he allowed some goals that he would probably like back? Of course he has.
Yes.
He does every year. So does Connor Hellebuck. So does Igor Shesterkin. It happens. And so I think that looking at his statistics and his win-loss record, which is not good, but hey, you know what? His win-loss record is indicative of the entire team's win-loss record when you start as many games as he does. So again, I think it's if you are pinning this on him and you are saying that he's over the hill, he's overrated, he shouldn't have signed this contract, whatever, you are not watching these games. He is being hung out to dry most of the time by this defense. And listen, when you're, again, I'm not just saying, oh, the defense is bad. I mean, they are actively making it harder for him.
Hard for him to do his job.
They're screening their own goalie half the time. I'm like, listen, I'm not the person. I do not like to constantly bring up how small Juuse Saros is. I don't want to be like a national broadcast and be like, well, he's not the tallest fella, because everyone always does that. Yes, he's fun sized, but you need to be aware of that. Like, just because he's fun sized, that doesn't make him a bad goalie. He's incredibly explosive, incredibly athletic with the way he moves up and down, side to side. I mean, he just explodes and he plays big. However, the fact remains that he is not big. So if you are a defenseman, maybe don't stand right in front of him. Like,
Or sit on him, just throwing it out there.
Or
He is
tackle
not
him.
Santa
Yeah.
Claus. Don't sit on his lap.
Don't sit on him, don't tackle him, don't block him, don't screen him, like, just basic things. I don't know. And again, I think that this has a lot to do with the system just not clicking with this team, because it's a very general pattern. And this is not just defense, this is offense as well. But it's guys looking like they have no idea where they're supposed to be or what they're supposed to be doing. And that is that's a problem that has plagued the entire roster this year. And
Yeah.
so I'm not, again, not trying to vindicate Juuse Saros and say that he's never done anything wrong ever. That's always what, I say to my dog, when she's bad and then she looks at me like with her puppy dog eyes. I'm like, oh, you've never done anything wrong ever. As much as I want to say that about Juuse Saros, has he done some bad things? Of course he has. But he is not the reason. He is not the reason that this season has gone off the rails the way it has. If anything, he's the reason that they've been in these games as much as they have. You look at all the 1-goal losses that this team has had this year. He's kept them in those games because they weren't scoring goals. And now you're kind of starting, maybe not consistently, but you're starting to see more of the goal scoring, but the defense is still horrendous. And so again, that impacts the way he does his job. So if I were him, I would be livid. I'm like, you know what? No wonder he went after Sidney Crosby that one play. I'm like, that had been building to a boil.
Yes.
He
All
was
season, baby.
I was like, I almost wanted to, you want to take Sid aside and be like, hey man, that was not for you. Like, that was just like, that was the result of like pent up rage for
That was the
months.
straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes. Like, so sorry. You were the recipient of that. This was not about you. This was like poor little Juuse Saros just cracked. And quite frankly, I would too. And I kind of am right now on his behalf, because anytime I see, and this is not like a blind defense, he has not looked any worse than he has before. He, again, has had a better start to this season than he usually does. And then you look at guys like Justus Annunen, who's literally doing his job, by coming in and stabilizing the crease as the backup. And people are like, oh, Andrew Brunette trusts him more. They like him better. The backup goalie is not supposed to be bad. I think that's like, do people not realize that? Like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's my little rant, my little tirade. Everyone needs to lay off of Juuse Saros.
Yeah. Here is my little rant and little tirade, just to piggyback off what you're saying. When you see someone tweet out, I don't know, say something along the lines of, he's the most overrated player in the history of Nashville major professional sports.
Hypothetically.
If you hypothetically saw somebody tweet that out, here's what I would say to you. Just to reiterate what Emma said. Number one, been hung out to dry more than Amish laundry. Number two, Nashville ranks 29th in goals for. Juuse Saros can stop a lot of pucks, but if the rest of the team doesn't, I don't know, put some of them in the opposite end of the ice, Juuse Saros is not going to have a great win percentage. He's not going to have a great record. Do I think that Juuse Saros is an elite goaltender? I do. Does Juuse Saros make this team a better team? He does. Can Juuse Saros single-handedly take a team with zebras as issues and make them a playoff contender by himself? He cannot. Let's revisit. He's not Santa Claus. So when you look at what is going on with this Nashville Predators team, it cannot fall solely on one person. I would love for that to be so, because that is an easy fix. But when you look at this roster, overall, this is what I'm going to say to people who say we need to tear it down, get rid of these guys, and move on. I think you have the potential for elite goal scoring with Filip Forsberg. He has to be surrounded by the right players. Roman Josi is an elite defenseman in the NHL, and he is not done yet. Finally, as Emma and I have pointed out, Juuse Saros is an elite goaltender. He is just trying to keep a team in front of him with so many issues in games, and he is one man with a glove and a blocker. Are there games where you were like, "Oof, you were off"? Yeah, there have been a couple games where he's been off. But
has he ever single-handedly cost this team a game?
No. Has he single-handedly won games for this team over the course of his tenure for the Nashville Predators? More times than you all looking at a column can count.
Put some respect on this man's name. He is not getting it. He's not getting it from his teammates with the way they're playing in front of him. And he's not getting it from the fans who are saying that, oh, he's washed up, he's overrated, whatever.
Fans before no move clause kicks in. Don't you dare.
That's not happening. It's not happening.
It's not happening. We're going to see what players like Forsberg, like Josi, like Juuse Saros do as Nashville in this last final stretch of this regular season kind of infuses some younger players. Let's see what they do with that opportunity. It's going to be a different role than what they were intended to play at the beginning of the season. Those are our thoughts. So go ahead, give it to us. We're in a mood. Let us know if you think that Forsberg, Josi, and Saros are elite enough to make Nashville a better team over the next 3-4 seasons. Let us know in the comments of this video. Of course, you can reach the podcast on social media, LO_Predators as well. Emma, before we log off and take a deep breath and find our center again, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News, the Nashville Predators site. And then again, if you're tired of hearing about the Nashville Predators because it's not fun right now and you want to hear about some other teams and what they're doing, go check me out over also at the Hockey News on the Wraparound Show every Monday and Thursday.
Awesome. And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, Emma and I are going to take a deep breath. We're going to find our hockey Jesus, and we're going to find joy in our hearts. We hope that you all do too on this Tuesday moving forward. We're going to be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We're going to be previewing that Four Nations face-off where Juuse Saros is going to shut everybody out. We'll see you tomorrow for that.